You gave a human caffeine and left him alone with the razor claw pup? You realize that thing eats titanium, right? Commander Draft's mandibles clacked as he waved the data pad in front of the officer's face. The footage was paused on a grainy security feed. A human crouched in a hangar, holding out what appeared to be a wrench like it was a chew toy. The razor claw, a juvenile of a species considered too unstable for even the warlords to tame, was curled up beside him, gnawing happily. Lieutenant Vrock shuffled awkwardly, his talons clicking against the alloy deck plating. He said he raised worse. From Earth. Rot something. Rottweiler, came the voice from the speaker system. It was flat, amused. And yeah, Razor Claw's just a big old puppy with murder in its eyes. The speaker crackled and was replaced by the human himself, stepping into the command room, wiping grease from his hands with a rag that looked like it had once been part of a clean uniform. Tall, scarred, and always chewing something that crackled between his teeth, Mason Whitlock was not the type of man Draft wanted near volatile bioweapons. Draft's frills stiffened. You were given strict orders to monitor the Razor Claw from outside the containment field? Mason shrugged. It cried when I left. Real tears. Big drippy ones. Looked like someone microwaved a crocodile. You ever try ignoring that? The creature leveled 3 armored drones last week. And now it rolls over when I say, "Who's a good boy?" Progress. Giraffe looked to Vrock. Vrock looked at the floor. Mason grinned. Besides, you wanted it trained. I'm training it the old-fashioned way. Discipline, positive reinforcement, treats. You know what it likes? Rebar and head pats. Don't worry, I keep the gloves on. You touched it? Giraffe hissed, his tone climbing several frequencies. Petted it, Mason corrected. Scratched behind the, whatever those plates on its neck are called. It gurgled. Pretty sure that's a purr. Giraffe activated the vid feed again. The creature, 2 meters tall at the shoulder, armored hide like volcanic rock, 6 legs, fangs like industrial drills, was attempting to sit in Mason's lap. It wagged a tail thick as a tree trunk. Mason, unbothered, pushed it off and tossed a crowbar for it to chase. The Razor Claw bolted after it like an eager hound. He calls me Dad now, Mason added. Giraffe blinked. It speaks? Sorta. Mimics. Mostly grunts and a weird throat warble when I say, "Who's your dad?" But close enough. You will cease contact immediately, Giraffe snapped. Can't. He'll get separation anxiety. It is a military-grade apex predator. It's also housebroken now, Mason said, unwrapping a protein bar. Takes itself to the corner of the hangar and everything. The silence that followed was so deep the floor hum of the warship became deafening. He will turn on you the moment the neural inhibitors decay, Giraffe warned. But his voice lacked force now. He'd seen the footage. So had the rest of the command council. The Razor Claw let human children ride it on the training field 2 days ago. One even braided its tail, and it liked it. That thing was bred for carnage. Bred to gut platoons with its teeth, Giraffe muttered. You turned it into a glorified lapdog. Mason bit into his bar. Yeah, good, isn't it? It was in some disturbing way. The Razor Claw was stable, happy, and terrifyingly loyal. It slept outside Mason's quarters, growled at anyone who approached him too fast, and once destroyed a malfunctioning med drone with what looked like a protective snarl. You're saying this is useful? Vrock ventured. Mason nodded. It obeys. Won't take orders from anyone but me, but still, we've run drills, targets, formations. It's a one-creature strike team, faster than any of your bots, stronger. I say fetch, and it levels a fortified position. It thinks you're its sire. Well, yeah, Mason said. Wasn't exactly planned, but we bonded. Giraffe slumped back in his gravity chair. This is an embarrassment. It's a solution, Mason replied. You bred a weapon and couldn't control it. I gave it a name, Chunk, and now it follows me like I hung the stars. Chunk? He's thick, Mason said, as if it explained everything. They didn't decommission the Razor Claw. Instead, it was transferred to Task Force Ember, a special recon and assault team that operated behind enemy lines. Chunk, with Mason at his side, quickly became a legend. The first report came from the Brundak siege. Enemy forces overrun, defenses shredded, command bunker breached, all within 4 minutes. Mason's team entered last. The only warning was a deep, guttural bark over the comms, followed by panicked alien screams. The second report was worse. Footage leaked from a Cantorized scout drone showed Chunk leaping from a cliff, landing in the midst of an armored column, and slinging tanks aside like chew toys. The soldiers didn't stand a chance. Some swore he grinned. The enemies of the coalition began putting bounties on the beast's head. Mason, too. One broadcast labeled him the Tamer of Death. He wore it like a badge. Back at command, Draft sat through another mission debriefing, staring at a screen that showed Mason napping with his head propped against the Razor Claw's side. The creature lazily flicking its tail and emitting what could only be described as a contented rumble. "This is a violation of every known protocol," he muttered. "Sir," said Vrock, watching the same feed with something akin to awe. "What if he's right?" "Right? About what?" "That we've been doing it wrong. All of it. We engineer beasts, but he raises them. He babysits them and turns them into war assets." Mason's voice came over the speakers again, from an earlier log. "Who's my boy? Who's my big chompy boy?" "You are! Yes, you are!" The Razor Claw roared happily. Commander Draft groaned and turned off the screen. "Someone bring me a report on Earth's other so-called domesticated species. If this man turns a war beast into a pet, I dread to see what happens when he meets a dragon." They tried poisoning the Razor Claw. Not officially, of course. No one in the Coalition command would ever admit it. But one of the ration pallets that arrived for Task Force Ember contained meat laced with a nerve agent only lethal to that specific genetic strain. 5 minutes after the first bite, Chunk threw it back up, dug a shallow hole, and buried it like trash. Mason found him afterwards, licking his chops and looking confused. "Someone messed with your dinner?" Mason asked, crouching beside the beast. The Razor Claw let out a low, questioning growl. Mason examined the patch of soil, the empty ration wrapper half buried in spit. His expression darkened. The next morning, the commanding officer of Forward Base Corin 7 was found locked in a storage container with a recording of the incident playing on loop, a note stuck to the outside that simply read, "Try again, and I'll let him bury the next one with the wrapper." Draft watched the incident unfold via security feeds and resisted the urge to press his claws into his skull. He hated being right, but he hated being powerless more. He had authorized 3 separate investigations into Whitlock's influence over the Razor Claw. Each ended with glowing reports about mission success rates, reduced collateral damage, and, most troubling of all, higher troop morale. Apparently, soldiers felt safer knowing the apex predator liked belly rubs from the guy in charge. He summoned Mason again. The man strolled in wearing a flame-retardant jacket streaked with soot and what looked suspiciously like bite marks. He looked cheerful. "You took Chunk into a burning bunker?" Draft demanded. "He smelled survivors," Mason said simply. "They'd sealed themselves in to avoid the gas. I couldn't find the vent access, but he just pointed. With his claws? With his tail, whapped it like a pointer dog. Cute, right?" "No," Draft said flatly. "It is not cute, it is unnatural. You're anthropomorphizing a genetically designed hyperpredator." "He sneezed yesterday and then got mad at the ceiling for it," Mason said. "He's more relatable than half your officers. You're turning him into a mascot. I'm turning him into the future of tactical warfare." Draft blinked. Mason leaned forward. "Listen, you want drones? Fine. You want AI? Sure, but nothing matches instinct. Chunk doesn't calculate. He decides. I don't tell him who to maul. I just point at the direction where the danger is and let him choose how he handles it. And he's never wrong." The door chimed. Vrock entered with a pad. "Sir, we've got new footage. Patrol scouts picked it up on the Viren Ridge. Unauthorized Canthari outpost, hidden in the ice cliffs. Chunk found it." Draft gestured sharply. "Play it." The feed was thermal at first. 2 red dots moving across a white field of cold. One small, one massive. They approached a jagged bluff. The larger heat signature paused. Then suddenly it leapt. The next 10 seconds were chaos. Bodies flung, walls shattered. What looked like a flamethrower was absorbed by the creature's armored hide, followed by a growl that shook the drone's audio sensors. Then silence. Chunk sat at the edge of the crater he'd made, head cocked, waiting. The smaller dot, Mason, walked up casually, kicked at some rubble, and gave the beast a fist bump. Draft turned away from the screen. "I could have sent a battalion," he muttered. "And you didn't have to," Mason said. The next week it got worse, or better depending on perspective. After wiping out the outpost, Chunk started recognizing ship classes. He'd look up from the base launch pad, spot incoming signatures, and snarl or wag depending on whether they were allies. When a Vaydari cruiser feigned peace negotiations to get close to Command HQ, Chunk positioned himself in front of the landing zone and refused to move. When security insisted he clear the pad, he ripped the landing struts off their own shuttle to make a point. The cruiser fled before ever touching down. "Do you see what I mean?" Mason said during the debrief. "The beast knows." Draft massaged his mandibles. "You've turned him into a living early warning system. I've raised him into a partner." There was a long pause. Vrock cleared his throat. "Sir, the Behavioral Analysis Department has requested DNA samples." "From the Razor Claw?" From Mason." "Why?" "They think it might not be the beast that's special. It might be him." Mason blinked. "Excuse me?" "They want to study your scent profile, pheromones, brain chemistry, even vocal tonality. Something about the way you talk to it activates a part of its neurostructure normally dormant." "You're saying I'm part dog whistle?" "They think you trigger imprints," Vrock said. "Instinctive loyalty binding. Like how some reptiles recognize the first moving object they see as their parent. Only this one imprinted several weeks after hatching. That's not supposed to be possible." Mason rubbed his jaw. "Huh. Wonder if this means I should start a kennel." Draft stood. "You will not submit to any biological dissection." I wasn't planning to." "Good, because I need you in the field." That was new. Draft had never willingly assigned Mason to anything. He usually just complained after the fact. "What changed?" Mason asked. Draft brought up a hologram of a planet, small, rocky, dust red. "Zareth 4, he said. "New theater. Kenthari have dug in. Fortified ridges, buried weapons, cloaked artillery nests. It would cost us thousands to break them." "And you want me and Chunk to walk in and chew through it?" "No," Draft said. "I want you to scare them out." Mason blinked. "Say again?" "We have intercepted comms," Draft said. "Your reputation has spread. The enemy considers the Razor Claw a rogue weapon. They believe you control an entire pack." Mason grinned slowly. "You want me to play up the myth. Let them think you have more. That the Coalition has bred an army of tame monsters. You want psychological warfare. I want victory with minimal cost. Can you deliver that?" Mason leaned against the console. "Sure, but I'll need meat, loudspeakers, a dozen heavy-duty muzzles, and a fog machine." Draft tilted his head. "Fog machine? For the theatrics." And so Operation Howlstorm began. They dropped at dusk. Chunk led the way, armor glinting, muzzle dangling from his jaw like a necklace he refused to wear. The fog machines kicked in from orbit, cloaking the ridgeline in swirling vapor. Mason strode at the head of a small squad. Loudspeakers booming a chorus of snarls, growls, and electronic barks pre-recorded by Coalition sound engineers. The Kenthari panicked. Reports claimed hundreds fled their posts. Some activated their own minefields just to escape. Entire battalions retreated, convinced that for every shadow they saw, there were a dozen more Razor Claws waiting. But the best part was this. No one died. Not one human. Not one Razor Claw, since there was only one. It was the most efficient route in the campaign's history. Draft watched it all unfold from command with a slow shake of his head. He weaponized fear. "No," Vrock said softly. "He domesticated it." Mason returned 2 days later. Chunk slept beneath the dropship ramp, covered in soot and trophy scraps. Mason had a bite on his arm, a broken tooth in his pocket, and a wild grin. "You were right," he told Draft. "That was fun." Draft didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked up to the beast, paused, and held out a gloved hand. Chunk sniffed it, exhaled, and nudged it gently with his snout. "May the stars help us," Draft muttered. Only if the stars brought bacon, Mason said. Come on, Chunk. Let's go home. Chunk barked, loudly. The entire command floor flinched, and in the corner someone whispered, "We let that man raise a god." They tried cloning Chunk, not just once. 17 attempts across 5 facilities using top-tier tissue regeneration vats and accelerated neural mapping. They grew razor claws in perfect conditions, played them hours of Mason's voice, even infused early stimuli with his recorded scent markers. Some of the clones reacted positively. One tried to build a nest out of flight cables. Another sat quietly during feeding. But none of them bonded, not like the original. 3 turned feral before maturity. 2 had to be incinerated before they chewed through their own containment units. 1 broke into a ventilation shaft, vanished for a week, and was finally recovered only because it had followed the sound of a cafeteria microwave and fallen asleep beside it. Draft read every report. Each ended with the same line, rephrased in 20 languages. Subject lacks imprint response. No bond achieved. Recommend termination. And so, Task Force Ember remained a team of 2, Mason and his beast. Wherever they went, legends followed. Enemies scattered before them. Children sent drawings to the Coalition base depicting Chunk wearing aviator goggles and carrying Mason in a backpack like a giant shaggy toddler. But legends grow too large. When the Confederacy of Yarnax formed, a coalition of alien powers bent on ending human expansion, they made one demand: surrender the Razor Claw. They claimed he was destabilizing interstellar politics, that the idea of a human taming what every other species feared was not only insulting, it was dangerous. Draft sat across from Mason in the war room. "They've put a price on you," he said quietly. "Big one?" Mason asked. "They offered 5 million units. Dead or captured?" Mason gave a low whistle. "Guess I should start dodging better." Draft didn't smile. "They fear you." "I know. They fear him more." "I know that too." Draft turned the hologram. It displayed a fleet, massive. Dozens of warships en route, all converging on one world. Targos Station, a newly constructed diplomatic hub hosting both human and alien dignitaries. The Confederacy planned to strike it first. "They want to make an example," Draft said. "Burn it down. Blame it on Chunk." "They're going to start a war," Mason replied. "No," Draft said. "They've already started it." When they landed on Targos, the station was under siege. Shield barriers were faltering. Evacuation ships were overwhelmed. The defenders couldn't hold. The Yarnax had brought biomechs, 12 stories tall, engineered in flesh and steel, designed to resist artillery and tear through bunkers. They didn't expect a razor claw. Chunk dropped from orbit like a meteor, enclosed in a magnetic capsule. Mason rode inside with him, both of them armored, both silent. The moment the pod hit the ground, it split open, and a monster burst free. One biomech turned. It didn't get the chance to raise its cannon. Chunk hit its center mass, claws sparking, jaws crunching, tearing through layered synth hide like tissue. The thing staggered and fell, flailing. Mason leapt from the wreckage, rifle in hand, signaling retreat routes for trapped civilians. Cameras caught everything: civilian feeds, drone footage. It all went viral in real time. A beast that couldn't be cloned. A man no algorithm could replicate. Together they held the line. More mechs came. 8 in total. None survived. At one point, 3 converged at once. Chunk spun in place, tail whipping, smashing hydraulics. Mason tossed an incendiary charge into an exposed vent, dove, and came up firing. The 2 of them moved like instincts sharpened into choreography. No hesitation, no pause. Just trust. Eventually, the Yarnax forces retreated. No diplomatic excuse could mask it. They had launched a full-scale military assault, and one man with his adopted war beast had broken their momentum in under an hour. When the coalition broadcast the battle across the sector, neutral systems cheered. Recruitment spiked. Even hostile species paused. Because it wasn't just that humanity had tamed a monster, it was that humanity had connected with it. Weeks later, Mason and Draft met again. This time, on a quiet garden deck orbiting one of the old satellite colonies. "You're being offered a medal," Draft said. "Already have one. I use it to level a table back home. They want to name a program after you, something about instinctive integration protocols. Mason winced. Bit of a mouthful. Draft studied the man beside him. You understand you've changed everything. I didn't mean to. You bonded with a biological weapon. I raised a pup. You dismantled a doctrine. No species in this galaxy, none, has ever succeeded in turning pure engineered aggression into loyalty. We thought it was impossible. You proved us wrong. Mason shrugged. You all spent centuries building smarter bombs. We figured maybe it was worth trying to make a friend instead. Below them, Chunk curled on a landing pad, asleep in a patch of sun. The scars on his armor told of 50 battles. The new fur sprouting between plates said he didn't care anymore. He was safe. He was home. A young cadet passed nearby, pausing nervously. Sir, is it safe to get that close? Mason stood and walked down the ramp, crouching by Chunk's side. The beast lifted one eye, blinked lazily, and gave a low, rumbling snort. Only if you've got snacks, the cadet swallowed. Snacks? Rebar or bacon, Mason said, scratching Chunk's armored chin. He's flexible. The cadet nodded and backed away. Draft watched, his thoughts a storm. Tell me something, Mason, he said. Shoot. If we built another creature, not a clone, but something new, different, bigger even, could it work? Mason glanced back at him, a faint smile at the edge of his face. You want to know if we could raise a second one? Yes. Mason looked down at the sleeping beast. I don't know. Maybe. But first things first. What? Name him, then stay with him. Don't try to control it. Don't leash it, talk to it, feed it, trust it. You've got to be in the mud with it. Day in, day out. Bonding's not a switch. It's a choice. Draft hesitated. That sounds like parenting. Mason gave a low laugh. Now you're getting it. And so the program began. Not cloning, not breeding, bonding. Mason became its architect, not as a scientist, not as a general, as a dad. They called it the Whitlock Protocol. It changed everything. Galaxies would remember the time when the deadliest monster ever built didn't destroy the world. He just needed someone to believe he was worth saving.